Hello, and again, welcome to another Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Today I received this envelope in the mail. It is a model donated by Cole Barber from San Jose in California. He found this in his back garden after living there for 30 years. It's a number 64A Scammell breakdown truck, and these were first produced by Matchbox in 1959. Now what makes this one particularly interesting is that it is in a horrendous state, and as soon as he told me about it I thought I must have a go at this. It's going to make for a great restoration video. This thing is absolutely putrid. It's been buried in the ground for God knows how long. The axles are rusted, the wheels are missing, the cabin is actually full of clay. There's parts broken off of it, the rear hook's missing, a couple of the axle attachment points are corroded and have broken off and will need to be replaced. And obviously it's going to need a damn good sanding and a good paint job to make this look anywhere near as good as it did when it first came out the factory. So this indeed will be very challenging for me, so let's get the ball rolling. First up, I've got to get rid of all this mud. So in my laundry sink I just soak it with water and give it a bit of a scrub. You've got to start somewhere. This took longer than I thought as well. That clay was quite heavily packed inside that cabin. Now, having done that, I'm inspecting these axles. Obviously I need to replace them, but to replace them I have to get them off the model first. Well, these are seized in here with all the rust. So a number of my subscribers have recommended using Coca-Cola to remove rust and to loosen rusted parts. So you know what, I'm up for it. I'm going to give it a go. I actually had to use 2 cans here because it wasn't quite covered. There we go, you can see something's happening. There's definitely a chemical reaction of some sort. Well, this is the next day. It's almost 24 hours later, and I pull it out. To my surprise, it looks exactly the same as it did when I put it in. I guess that's another myth busted regarding the miracle powers of Coca-Cola. Now let's see, has this loosened any? Well, that turns a little bit there using the pliers. I wouldn't say it's free and easy. This one here has no movement. Well, actually it's getting there slowly. I'm terrified I'm going to break something here. Because of course if you break some... Oh, what did I say? Now I'm going to have to repair that as well as everything else. That's going to be tricky. I'm going to have to get my thinking cap on for this one. Well, I've decided to try and cut these and remove them from the inside. Rather than pulling them out, I'm going to push them in. Let's see if that works. Very tedious job, very time consuming, working it a little bit at a time. This one I'm cutting the end of the axle off to enable me to pull it through. There we go. Well, there's a couple of bits out. I really don't want to break these axle points here. So I'm taking my time, again wiggling, bending, cutting, wiggling, twisting, just teasing these things out. Getting quite a collection of little rusty bits there. Is this the last bit? Wow. Finally. Now I can set about maybe stripping the paint off this and thinking about fixing it. When I replace the axles, I'm going to use these rivets, as I've done in other previous restorations. So now it's time to strip the paint off of this and take it down to the metal. To do this I use my tried and tested Polystripper paint stripper. available from your local hardware store. So this model is probably over 50 years old. Let's see what the metal's like under this paint. My wife Julie has generously donated this toothbrush for me to use for this purpose. I guess you'll find out one day. Okay, that's phase one. I might have to repeat this process a couple of times because this casting has got a lot of little nooks and crannies in it where the paint collects. Here I'm using a dental tool to scrape out some of these bits of paint that are buried in the bottom there. That's very satisfying when you lift off a big chip like that. Now these toolboxes, oh look at that, there's a little fly came in and landed on there. Get rid of him. It's because I've got the window open. It's summer over here at the moment and it's pretty warm in my hobby room. Now I'm using a different dental tool. It's like a flat chisel tip to it. And I'm just trying to scrape off the surface oxidization, like the white powder. Just trying to expose the bare metal. And it's going to be a long road to make this look any good. This is the tow hook attachment point, and then part of the pivot pin is still in there and it's rusted in there good and proper. Here's another model I've got for comparison to show you what it should look like. So somehow I've got to get that out of there without breaking the tip off, and I'm not that confident, I must admit. I'm using these needle nose pliers and look at that, it just literally just detached as though it was never going to be fixed. It was never going to come out without breaking it. Here there's a light come off on the front whilst I've been working with it. I'm very cautiously straightening these axle points here. I don't want to snap these off as well. The centre support in the windscreen is broken. This one here seems good. This one's missing, obviously. And this one here is bent. Now, I know what's going to happen, but I've got to try. If I don't straighten that, someone will say in the video, after they've watched it, why didn't you straighten that post? So I'm going to try and straighten it. Before that, I'm going to give this a quick rub over with this rotary wire brush. Again, I'm still trying to get it to a point where I can think to myself, yes, this does have potential, because at the moment I am thinking I may have bitten off more than I can chew here. Look at this brush. That's like $2 for 5 off of some online shopping website. So obviously the quality's not there. So if you're going to buy little wire brushes, maybe buy some good quality name brand ones. They probably don't fly apart like that. Now I'm using a flat file to take off a few little burrs here and there and try and smarten this thing up. Some of the castings lines have become softened, I guess you could say, by the corrosion. So I'm just trying to neaten them up and sharpen the whole thing up a little bit to make it look like new. Give it a rub over with some steel wool. Every little thing you do helps. So I'm trying a lot of different things here. Again, this is awkward to get in the back there to clean it. Alright, this is the axles that I'm going to use. Well, I've taken off the rivet and I'm checking it out here for size comparison, and you know what? A little light globe went off in my head and I thought I could use that rivet as a bearing for the axle. So using this circular cutting wheel on my Dremel, I'm just cutting off a collar. And then I'm pushing on it and flattening the end. So when I pull it off and sand it down a little bit, what I end up with is like a miniature bearing that I should be able to fix onto here. I just need to make that hole a little bit larger so it will fit in there neatly. So I'm going to use my rat tail file and make that hole a little bit larger. Not too big, not too small. Now look at that, that fits in there lovely. If I can repeat that on the other side, then I might have found a solution. I did the same for the tailhook attachment point. I made 2 more little rings, again, out of those aluminium rivets. And I've temporarily glued them into position using some super glue and a little bit of baking soda. Here I am putting the second one on. It's very difficult to get these to line up and look good. Little pinch of baking soda there. When you mix the super glue and the baking powder, it forms a very, very solid bond almost instantly. And you can machine it and cut it like you could sort of metal, I suppose. So this is the start of it. What I'm going to do is, after I've fitted these things into place, I'm going to strengthen the join by using some JB Weld. The JB Weld is a 2-part epoxy resin that's reinforced with metal filings. So I think this restoration is screaming out for something like that. Before I fix it up with the epoxy, I'm just checking that I've got everything square, because I don't want to sit it down on its wheels and one wheel is sitting off the ground. So here's the JB Weld. It's a 2-part putty. Like I say, it's reinforced with iron filings. You use 50-50, so half of each. Mix it up so it's all one uniform colour, and now using a toothpick, I'm basically making a little fillet, I think it's called, or a gusset, just at the base of the axle, because I think it's a weak point, to tell you the truth. And now I'm dragging the JB Weld around and over the little bearing that I made. And this stuff takes 24 hours to dry, by the way. I'm using a minimal amount of this product because I've only got to sand it off afterwards when it's set. It looks a little bit ugly at the moment, but I'm going to do my best to make it look as good as I can. "24 hours later." So again, using this little grinding disc, just very gently grinding the sides off of this assembly at the back here. I'm being very careful I don't cut into the back of the truck too, because that would be pretty tragic if I did that. Now I've moved it in the vise and I'm coming down from the top. I'm just taking off a little bit of extra JB Weld there. And I'm actually taking it down to the metal in some areas. Now I'm finishing it off by hand. A small file, very gently. I mean, I don't know how strong this JB Weld is, and I'm a bit worried I'm going to break this. There wasn't quite enough gap in the center there for my reproduction hook that I ordered online, so I've just opened that up with a bit of emery paper folded in half. And I did the same with the front axles here. and I think they actually look quite good. So now I've done the hard bit, I'm going to go for the second hard bit, which is replacing these window pillars. As you can see, the one on the left that was bent, I snapped it off. I didn't think it would work, I didn't think I could straighten it, it was too fragile. Anyway, I've ground down the stubs, so I've got a flat edge to work with, and I'm cutting these split pins up. These are ideally suited for this type of repair because they're curved on one side and flat on the other. So if you position them with the curved side on the outside, they actually look like the original window frame elements. I've got a bit of masking tape in there with a coffee stirring stick just as a base onto which I can work. Otherwise the thing will fall in 100 times during this process and it gets pretty annoying. So anyway, what I'm happy with, I've lined it up with the seam on the bonnet and the seam on the roof there. Now again, the little dab of super glue, less is more in this case. You don't want to have a huge amount of material to sand away because it just is more time consuming. Now, more important than the outside is the inside. The inside you can't see. You can put some more super glue on the inside than you would on the outside, and more baking soda also, and that will reinforce those bonds from the inside where you can't see them. I'm happy with that. So after a bit of a sand and tidying it up with some small files, it's time for the undercoat. Once again, I'm using the Tamiya undercoat. It's the fine one and it does a fantastic job. It doesn't conceal any of the details on the casting, which is very important for an old model like this because I've already been sanding away on it and I don't want to degrade it anymore by putting on a thick coat of undercoat. So to make this colour green, I used some Mr. Hobby number 27, which is a light tan, and I mixed it with some the green, the XF70 green from the Tamiya brand, and then I added a couple of drops of black X1 just to darken it up and make it look like the original paint. Having done these models now for nearly 2 years, I guess, on and off, I've acquired a lot of spare parts. I was lucky to source 6 matching tyres that suit this vehicle, so I've given those a bit of a black wash to tidy them up, and I ordered a new hook from recovertoy.com online. Many of my subscribers have suggested that I should get my nails manicured because they are visible on the close-up shots of me working, so I took the plunge and went to a nail salon. Unfortunately, there was a breakdown in communication and the results were not exactly as I expected. I'm too polite to complain, so I guess I'm stuck with these nails for the time being. They really do a good job of gluing these on. So I'm back in the shed now. I'm not going to try and reform the axle ends using my drill press method with this model, because the original ones, as far as I could tell, were crimped. So what I do is I just cut them off. Remember, that's the rivet pins I'm using here. So it has one rounded domed end already, and so the other end I'm just going to crimp in my vise. Here I'm being very careful not to damage the model with the jaws of the vise. Now I use the ring spanner there as an extension on my bar on my vise so I can really tighten it up and crush that axle end flat. So very gently now, as I said, I'm cleaning up the end of the axle. Don't want to accidentally chip the paint or cut the model with that cutting wheel, and I finish it off with a bit of emery paper. So this is what I started with. Probably one of the most challenging makeovers I've ever attempted. Remember, this model was buried in the ground for 30 years. To tell you the truth, I didn't think I could pull it off. But this is what it looks like now. Replacement tyres, replacement axles, de-rusted, primed and top coated. The front headlights fixed, the axles are fixed, and I've got a reproduction hook on the back there. So now this truck can be put back into service and do what it was designed to do. That is to travel around and pick up broken down heavy military vehicles and take them back to the motor transport section for repair. This was Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye. Oh my god. Ah!
Thinners or?
Ow! Oh, would have been good to have some voiceover on this. Like, ouch! For sake. It's the last time I do this. Whew.
Thinners?